Okay, good morning. Welcome. This one is on what happens when you look at something and everything you look at pretty much goes inside your brain, and you want to manage these things because part of the visual aspects of playing any sport is that there can be things that you look at that distract you away from what it is you're trying to do. And, I have a funny story that I'm going to be sharing also a little bit later. So, coming up at 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, Rich Nair and I are going to be on Clubhouse, and we're going to be telling some funny stories of things that have happened on the tennis court and at clubs and whatnot. So, so right now we're talking about what, your attention follows where your eyes are looking, and then also then pretty much whatever you're looking at, it's going in your brain, and how you manage that is really an important part of how well you're concentrating in your match or not. So this is an interesting story from way back. We used to have a tournament here in San Jose, and Tommy Haas was a regular participant there. So there was a time when Tommy was playing a match, and it was pretty obvious that one of the ball girls, were 16, 17 years old, was really crushing on Tommy. She got the big Google eyes and all that. And then Tommy picked up on that, so he would always go to her for the ball. And then one time he smiled at her, and that was fatal. And so anyway, what ended up happening though, Tommy had won the first set, but then the girl actually became a little bit of a distraction. He ended up losing the second set. So he had to kind of like go. And so he didn't go to her for the ball anymore because he himself, it was a kind of a game within the game. But, he's a nice guy, and she was a cute kid, and he was just giving her a thrill, I guess, but, innocent. But still, he got himself distracted, and then he realized he had to get back to work. So this is a very important thing. So don't do that stuff. And, that poor girl, I mean, he kind of teased her a little bit, but whatever. All right, moving on. So, so there's some interesting things that happen, what will happen in matches is that you'll have players who will do things to distract you. There's a pretty small group, but they're out there. People who have really weird ways of, their serve ritual is very strange, or they have very odd ticks with the way they hit their stroke. And if you let that distract you, then you're actually, not really seeing the ball. Some people will do little tricks of gamesmanship of like, hanging up their towel on the back fence or whatnot, or they'll come with like a really intimidating presence. They'll give you the stink eye or whatnot. So one thing I recommend to people is, when there's something in the environment that is distracting to you, don't look at it, because as soon as you lay eyes on it, then it's going in, and then from there, then it's sort of more difficult to manage that. You have to make a conscious effort not to look. Then this is where part of the problem with juniors who look outside the court, for support from their parents or coaches, and then they're looking there and they're thinking about what's happening, and their eyes are not on what they're doing. So as a coach, what I generally am telling my players to do is, hey, look, the only thing that matters is what's on court 3 right now. So you keep your eyes on court 3. To avoid getting distracted by all these other things that can happen, people in the crowd, the weird things your opponent does, the towel hanging on the back, the idiosyncratic motions, other distractions that could happen. right? You might hear some commotion. There might be some yelling and screaming going on 2 courts over. You might want to look at that. You might get interested in a match next year. Don't do it. So in between points, what I recommend is for a moment, just shut your eyes for a moment. So it could be 1 or 2 seconds while you're walking. And that's a very restful thing to do. And then another thing that I think is a great guideline is in between points, you should look only at the ball, the ground, your racket, and maybe for a moment, your opponent, right? Now, I say maybe for a moment, your opponent, because it's good to check on their state of mind, their body language, all that stuff. But if what they're giving you is a visual intimidation and it's getting to you, then don't look at them. So, unless, of course, you're going to show them, you're going to meet them with the same sort of thing and equalize that. I don't know. That's a rough one, but that's part of the mental warfare of a tennis match. So then same thing is true. I mean, if when you're playing a match, generally in between points, you don't have ball kits, so you have to go pick up the ball. So you just you just look at that ball and walk towards it, pick it up, and then keep your let your eyes rest on that as you're going to it. This is a great way to kind of let down. You want to have a moment where you're not really looking at anything, and then you come back and you're in your ritual, you're getting ready and you're getting yourself fired up and ready to go again. But it's these things that you look at from the outside that your brain will spin on those things. So if you're not looking at them, then you also are less likely to think about them. And for a player who's been used to looking outside the fence to look at their parents, even when their eyes are here, it's going to take them a little while to stop wondering what they're thinking. But I do believe that the eye discipline is a big part of that. So keep in mind that whatever you're looking at, this is what your mind is going to pay attention to. And this is why in my lessons, when I'm talking to, one or a group of kids, I want their eye contact. I want them to be looking at me when I'm talking, because your eyes also pick up the nonverbal of the communication with people. So, when there's a problem on a court, right, like a scoring dispute or something about a call or some other issue that has to be resolved, it's really important to get really good eye contact with your opponent, because you also want to read their body language, because you don't want to have more conflict than you need to. I mean, it could be that, based on their body language, you start to figure out, hey, they're maybe feeling a little bit self-conscious, or, but then you can also sort of figure out if they're being standoffish or combative. So being able to read that situation is really important, and you're going to do that visually. So I have a little dust that seems to be flying right next to my camera. I don't know if you picked that up, but anyway, so let your eyes rest between points. Direct your eyes at the things that you want to pay attention to. Don't direct your eyes at the things you don't want to pay attention to, because those will distract you. And this is something I had to learn in my own game, and it's something that pretty much every season of high school tennis that I've coached, I've had one or a handful of players who like to look around and get themselves distracted, and then they lose sight of the concentration in their match. So it's not necessarily like a nose to the grindstone thing, but it's more of a, hey, manage it, pay attention to it, keep your eyes there. Sure, you can look over at the other court for a second or two, see the end of a point, right? But then let it go. You got to come back to what you're doing. Don't watch another player's full match on your changeover. You need to relax your mind during that time. So I hope you find this helpful. 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, Rich and I are going to be telling some funny tennis stories, and you can come on and tell yours on Clubhouse. If you need a Clubhouse invitation, send me a message and I'll think about it. And thanks for watching. Keep your eyes where you want to be paying attention, and you're going to have a better time in your match.